The alarm on my console screamed before I even understood what I was looking at, and my hands froze over the controls because the image on the screen made no sense. My name is Vex Thural, and I am a student at the Asaran Academy, 300 light-years from a small blue planet called Earth. My class had one simple task this cycle: study the deadliest animals on that planet, record their strength, record their danger, then move on to the next world. I had done this before with a dozen other planets, and nothing ever surprised me, until today. The image on my screen showed a human child, no older than 6 years, sitting beside a fully grown lion, not behind a wall, not behind a cage, sitting right next to it, one small hand resting on its back, while the massive animal simply lay still, watching the sky. I called my clutch partner Mia Ashford into the room. She was still eating her morning ration when she saw the screen, and she nearly dropped it. "Is that real?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Is that footage altered?" "I checked 3 archives," I said. "It is real." We sat there in silence, staring at that lion, an animal that our own files listed as one of the deadliest hunters on the entire planet. Bite force strong enough to crush bone, speed to outrun almost anything on land. And yet here it was, resting beside a child who could not even reach its shoulder. Our instructor, Professor Callum Reyes, entered the room a moment later. He was not human himself, though he had studied Earth for over a decade, and had taken a human name out of respect for the species he researched. He looked at our screens and did not seem surprised at all. "You have found the pet files," he said calmly. "Pet," I repeated. "You mean this animal is kept willingly in a home?" "Some are," he said. "Lions, wolves, even large cats like tigers, in rare and controlled cases. Humans have been doing this for longer than most species even realize." Mia's hands were trembling as she pulled up more files. Wolves that lived inside houses, sleeping beside human children. Great cats raised from birth by a single human, with no pack, no group, no backup, just one person, and one predator strong enough to end that person's life in seconds. Videos of humans swimming beside orcas, animals so intelligent and so powerful that they hunted in coordinated teams and could take down prey many times their size. "This defies every rule we have ever studied," I said. "On every other world we have observed, weaker species avoid the strong ones. They run, they hide, they build walls. Humans are doing the opposite. They are walking straight toward the danger and inviting it into their homes. Which is why Earth remains one of our highest priority worlds." Professor Reyes said, "Sit. I want to show you something that will change how you see this entire planet." He pulled up a new file, older than any I had seen before, showing grainy black and white footage of humans sharing a fire with wild wolves, thousands of years in the past. The wolves did not attack. They circled the fire slowly, cautious but curious, and over many, many years, something strange began to happen. The wolves that stayed closer to the humans, the ones that were calmer, less aggressive, began to survive and reproduce more than the wild, aggressive ones. Generation after generation, the wolves changed. Not because humans caged them, not because humans beat them into submission, but because the wolves themselves, again and again, chose to come back. "They tamed a predator without ever forcing it," Mia whispered. "The animal wanted to stay." "Exactly," Professor Reyes said. "This is the pattern we see across the entire history of this species. Humans do not simply conquer strength. They build trust with it, and in return, the strength chooses to protect them instead of destroy them." I felt a strange tightness in my chest, something between fear and awe. I thought about every other planet I had studied. On Kryvena, the weaker species built enormous walls to separate themselves from predators. On Thessaly Prime, entire cities existed underground, purely to avoid contact with dangerous wildlife. Every species I had ever studied treated danger as something to be feared and avoided. Humans treated danger as something to be understood, and sometimes, something to be loved. "There is more," Professor Reyes said, and his voice dropped lower. "I need you both to see the newest reports. Something happened 3 days ago that the wider council does not yet know about." He opened a live feed, not archived footage, but something recent. The location was a private wildlife reserve in a place called Montana. A man named Daniel Whitfield had been working there for over a decade, caring for orphaned predators that could not survive in the wild alone. Wolves, bears, even a young mountain lion. 3 nights ago, a storm knocked out the power across the entire reserve. The fences that kept the enclosures separated failed. Every predator on the property, some of them animals that had never been fully tamed, was suddenly free to roam without any barrier at all. Daniel was alone that night. His assistant, a woman named Emma Sinclair, had gone into town for supplies and could not return until the storm passed. Communication towers were down. No help was coming. Mia leaned closer to the screen. He was alone with every predator on that reserve, loose, with no fences? Yes, Professor Reyes said. And here is what happened next. The footage showed Daniel walking out of his cabin with only a flashlight into complete darkness, rain pouring around him. He did not carry a weapon. He did not run. He walked calmly toward the sound of the animals, speaking in a low, steady voice. My chest tightened as I watched a full-grown wolf appear from the tree line, its eyes reflecting the flashlight beam. On any other world, this would be the final moment of the story. But Daniel did not step back. He crouched down slowly, keeping his voice steady, and the wolf, after a long tense pause, walked toward him instead of away. That is the same wolf he raised as a pup, Professor Reyes explained. It remembered him. But the wolf was not the only animal loose that night. Somewhere in the darkness, a bear that had only been at the reserve for a few months, still wild, still unpredictable, was moving through the trees as well. This was not an animal Daniel had raised. This was an animal that barely trusted him at all. The footage showed Daniel freezing when he heard branches breaking nearby. The wolf beside him went still too, ears forward, watching the same direction. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the bear stepped into view, massive and uncertain, clearly agitated by the storm and the broken fences. I gripped the edge of my console. Every instinct in my body told me this was the moment danger would win. On every other world I had studied, this was the moment where the weaker creature paid the price for coming so close to something so powerful. Daniel did not run. He slowly lowered himself to sit on the wet ground, making himself smaller, less threatening, and kept speaking in that same calm voice, the same voice he had used with the wolf. The bear stood there, swaying slightly, watching him. "Come on," Mia whispered, as if the man on the screen could somehow hear her. "Please." The bear took one step closer, then another. My entire body tensed as I watched, and even Professor Reyes, who had studied this planet for years, leaned forward slightly. Then, slowly, the bear turned its head away and moved past Daniel, following the tree line instead of approaching him directly. It was not trust in the same way the wolf trusted him. It was something else, something more fragile, a kind of uneasy peace that did not require full understanding, only patience and calm. By sunrise, every animal that had escaped that night had been located and returned safely to secure areas, with Daniel and 2 other workers who arrived at dawn working together without a single injury reported. Emma returned as soon as the roads cleared and found Daniel exhausted but unharmed, sitting quietly with the same wolf resting beside him. When the footage ended, the room stayed silent for a long moment. "This is why I brought you both here," Professor Reyes finally said. "Not to frighten you, but to help you understand something important. Humans are not powerful because they are the strongest species in the universe. They are far from that. They are important because of how they respond to power greater than their own. They do not simply run from it, they study it. They approach it with patience. And time again, across thousands of years, they have found ways to stand beside creatures that could destroy them, and instead, walk away side by side. I looked back at the paused image on my screen, Daniel sitting calmly in the rain, with a wolf beside him, and a bear walking peacefully into the trees. If they can do this with animals, I said slowly, animals that share no language with them, no understanding of what a human even is, what happens when they meet a species that can actually speak to them, reason with them? Professor Reyes did not answer right away. He simply looked at both of us, and for the first time since I had known him, I saw something that looked like genuine caution in his expression. That, he said quietly, is exactly the question every advanced species watching this planet needs to be asking themselves. Mia and I sat there long after the professor left the room, staring at that final image, and I realized that the fear I felt was slowly turning into something else, something closer to respect. We had come to this planet expecting to study predators. Instead, we had learned that the most fascinating predator on Earth was not the lion, the wolf, or the bear at all. It was the calm, patient creature who could sit beside all three and somehow walk away in peace.